We're live. My name is Rod Graham, and this is my YouTube slash Twitter slash Facebook now, because I'm streaming on all those channels. Um, Series called Being, and I've had Rebecca on before, but I don't think it was under this title. I think I was just asking her about different things. So this time I want to learn a little bit more about Rebecca Christiansen. So this is going to be fun. For those who don't know what this series is about, it's meant to be a combination of learning about the person, how they came to be, but also their takes on social and cultural and political issues. So I try to find interesting people who can do that. And so I've known Rebecca for a while. How I know Rebecca, I don't know, but somehow I do. It might come up in conversation, but I really can't remember Rebecca. But it's good that I know you because you are very interesting and I want to talk to you. So let's get to know you a little bit.
Yes, let's.
What were you doing? I'm sorry for cutting you off. What were you doing before the pandemic?
So before the pandemic, I was working at a bookstore, which is kind of the Canada equivalent to Barnes and Noble. So like a big box, kind of big tent bookstore that sells a little bit of everything. And
Mhm.
um, it was like my dream job since I was a little kid, being a bookish person and a writer. Like I always wanted to work there. And the reality was not obviously like not as good as I thought it was going to be. So I was just kind of like pushing through, getting promoted up through the ranks a little bit. So I had a
Mhm.
leadership position. I was working every morning at 5 a.m., Monday to Friday, doing the
Wow.
kind of operations side of the business. And I was in charge of the shipping and receiving aspect of the business. And I
Okay.
really, really enjoyed that aspect of the job. Um,
Okay. So wait, now it's well, it sounds like you're saying it's good, but you started by saying it wasn't what you thought it was going to be. So what
yeah,
was the issue? Yeah.
so there were a lot of really awesome aspects. Working in a bookstore, you get a lot of perks if you're a bookish person. You get a lot of advanced reader copies. You get a lot of opportunities to get in on special events and meet
Hmm.
and talk to authors and stuff. So that stuff was all really cool. Um, but the downside, obviously, is that it pays very badly. The company is um, the company is a extremely capitalist kind of oriented company, which they all are. But
Yeah, yeah,
this one
yeah.
tried to walk the line between we're cultural, we're part of Canada's cultural landscape. We bring the arts to the people. We love our employees, while being like a cutthroat, ruthless company. And that
Interesting.
it
Cutthroat to the employees or to like small market businesses or smaller bookstores?
both to
Hmm.
the employees in a large way, and that kind of the pandemic kind of raised that to like a fever pitch.
Hmm. Hmm.
But they, because they are the little guy compared to Amazon, they tried to kind of play that underdog role. Meanwhile, they were the biggest non-Amazon bookstore in the space in Canada. So they kind of tried to, they spoke out of both sides of their mouth a lot. They were very kind of airy fairy and into, like the corporate culture, but like kind of like the new agey wellness kind of corporate culture, like very
Hmm,
kind of
interesting.
weird. It was the kind of
Uh-huh.
company where you just kind of have to put up with the bullshit and be like, yeah, yeah, whatever. Like really I just work a retail job, but you guys try to like make it sound and way better than it is. So I was kind of dealing with that. And it was going fairly well. I was like getting promoted. I was in a part of the business that I really enjoyed, which was like not to do with customers. It was more about like dealing with couriers and deliveries and like data and inventory, which I really like.
Hmm.
And then when the pandemic hit, um, the company tried to keep doing their bit of being, we're the best employer, we're a great employer, while also treating the employees very badly. In the early days of the pandemic in Canada, there wasn't a mask mandate in public spaces for about 6 months. And employees really wanted this because customers took that as license to just do whatever they wanted in the store. Like we had assaults on employees and like people spitting on employees, and employees
Wait,
were just being treated horribly. Yeah, this all happened in my store.
wait, but I don't get the, okay, so there's no mask mandate. So
Yeah.
this meant that employees, I'm sorry, customers would spit on it. So why weren't they spitting on them before? Like, what's the big deal about no mask mandate?
Well, the company they tried this like PR line of being like, we're not going to ask that you wear a mask, but we're going to prefer it if you do. So it was this big kind of thing where the people who were good and wearing masks were fine, but the people who didn't want to, they were kind of provoked by those little hints at being like, oh,
Oh, I see.
we
I
would
see.
love it if you would
Ah,
wear a
yeah.
mask.
Mhm,
So there was just this
mhm.
antagonism between those customers and the employees. And employees had no corporate line to stand by. There was no policy. We couldn't just say, like, hey, you need to wear a mask. Like, this is the policy. If you don't follow it, you need to leave. So employees were continually asking the company to put in place some kind of rule that we could fall back on to deal with customers, and they wouldn't. They also were not forthcoming with funds for people to call in sick or self isolate. And they were not very forgiving of people. So there was kind of an encouragement to come in when you had COVID symptoms,
Mhm.
while at the same time trying to say, like, oh, running that corporate line of like, we're trying to protect everybody. And it was just like they couldn't do it anymore. So the company message boards kind of lit up when someone posted a post that was like, I don't want to come to work anymore because of this. And then so the company basically melted down.
Wow.
um, on the employee side, my store started a unionization effort, and I was not a part of that because I had a leadership position in the store. So I was a boss
Mhm.
on paper, but because I was a junior leader, I didn't have the pay packages of the other managers. So I was literally the only non-salaried, non-benefits employee in the store who was not covered by the union. So
Oh, that's
that
terrible.
it was horrible. So I had to be the boss. And if you've ever worked in a situation where a store is unionizing, it's pretty intense. Like there's lots of like secret conversations. You might turn a corner and people are talking and they shut up. So like the morale was just terrible.
Mhm.
So the company like kind of went crazy, hired an HR consultant to interview every employee and get a read on how they were feeling. When he interviewed me, he took down 7 pages of notes of grievances. And the next day, our boss was fired. They fired 2 other managers. It was just like a shit show. So that's what I was doing, like at the very beginning of the pandemic.
Okay.
And coincidentally, that's when I kind of switched from being like a right libertarian to like a social democrat.
Interesting. Yeah, we kind of talked about that before. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that was what I was dealing with when I was starting to think like, holy crap, like my whole life is
Mhm.
built on these systems that I take for granted. So when those started to fall away in the pandemic, that's when I was like, oh, this is not the world that I thought I lived in.
Yeah. Yeah, so I asked that question. It wasn't at random. It was more like my sense is that a lot of people didn't realize, and you said it in a good way, that there are these systems out there that impact us. And in the
Yep.
pandemic, I would have called them social structures, but it's the same thing. Anyway, the pandemic sort of made those things real to us.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people, you and me as well, we kind of shifted a little bit because of the pandemic. We're like, oh, something's going to, like a lot of people, they left their jobs. They realized that they didn't have to work so hard, this type of thing. In my
I
case,
did
I
that.
was, yeah, yes, well, good. I'm glad. Like,
Yeah.
like a pretty rough place to be,
Yeah.
Rebecca. So I'm glad that you moved on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, in my case, it wasn't a career thing, it was like personal. I was like, oh God, this space by myself. Like, I had to look around and realize just how much I needed people. So the pandemic.
Yeah.
Now, um, they a very successful book called Moonlight Cafe. Now, I'm gonna try. I got this. I'm still using this new uh, software here, but I'd like to show the page. I think I can. All right. Okay. So are you seeing this, Rebecca?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good, good, good. So, um, so I want to ask you about Moonlight Cafe. I think we talked about We Make Mayhem a little bit last time. So
Yeah.
what is Moonlight Cafe? What is that about?
Yeah. So Moonlight Cafe kind of came out of this idea I had. Um, have you ever heard, there's that story, I think it was like a New York Times op-ed or something, and it was like how to make people fall in love with each other. And there's like a series of like 50 questions that you have to ask each other while looking each other in the eye. And it's kind of like an internet meme thing.
Uh-huh.
So I was sort of thinking about that kind of situation. So the premise is that the main character has kind of purchased these like 5 couples counseling sessions for him and his boyfriend because they're kind of in a rocky place and he thinks that would be a good fix. But the
Oh,
boyfriend
wait.
breaks up with
You
him.
know, wait. Okay. Okay. You're gonna the premise and all, but I should have done a little bit more homework. I didn't realize that this was a love story between a same-sex couple.
Yeah,
Now, of course, right?
tis.
Isn't it? Okay. So, okay. I mean, that's cool and all. I'm not gonna say see, but I'm saying this because how can you write that? I mean, that's just very impressive.
I always have.
Okay. Yeah.
Since I was a teenager, that's kind of what I've most gravitated to, writing wise. Not exclusively, but I've written a lot of stories about gay male characters.
Do you interview them? Like, no, like, okay, so I don't know what's in the book, but are any of there, is there like some kind of other scenes where you're scenes that
Yeah.
read?
Yep. Um, I read a lot
I see.
of gay literature, so
Uh-huh.
and I always have like since I was like 13. So I do a lot of that kind of research. Mhm. That's okay. Yeah. So I was thinking about that story, and so I got this idea for a guy who he purchases these couples therapy sessions. He has like 5 of them, but his boyfriend breaks up with him the day he purchases them, and there's no refunds. So he's stuck with these 5 couples counseling sessions, and he can't convert them into personal counseling sessions, so he's kind of like shit out of luck. But then he works in a cafe called the Moonlight Cafe, and he's telling his coworker about this, like, "Oh crap, I'm stuck with this, like these 5 couples counseling sessions I can't use." And a young actor in the cafe overhears him and offers to pretend to be his boyfriend for these sessions so that he can still get something out of them. And so that's where the story begins. Of course they do. Yeah, I just wrote it. Oh, I don't remember when I started writing it, but I think I finished it in the summer. I finished it in like August, and I think it has over 7,000 reads now. So it's still my like least read story, but Wattpad is funny. It cycles through. So like you'll have a really low period, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, the algorithm picks you up and suggests you to a bunch of people. So it's at 7,000 now, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes up a lot in the next couple months for no reason, just out of nowhere. Yeah, Wattpad chose it for they curate a lot of lists, and they put it on the editor's choice list for I think it was March of last year. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I just might. Yeah, yeah. The term as people use it or the thing they're trying to refer to? Okay, how they're using it. How they're using it, I think it's interesting because I feel like for a long time, they were looking for a term to really settle on because do you remember a couple of years ago, like SJW was the big term, and it was SJWism, social justice. I know that critical social justice was floating around a little bit. I don't know if it really caught on. It was kind of too many words, I think. But I think wokeism is kind of what they've landed on, and it seems like it's what caught on in the mainstream, which is interesting. And I think that catching on kind of propelled a lot of that, those complaints to places that they never would have gone. It is. I think they are trying to refer to the attempt to voice concerns that social progressives have been increasingly picking up on. So I think that's ultimately what they are upset about. It's the vocalization of concerns. The concerns themselves, people who object to wokeism don't always actually disagree on the concerns or the claims of fact that the concerns relate to. So you'll get kind of more centristy people who, when you talk to them, when you drill down to the actual issue and you strip away kind of the social justice woke aspects, they'll actually agree with you on something. And and that's good. But I think the more hardcores, the more hardcore types are really upset about the more aesthetic issues. So the people that they find cringe, that's basically what they're reacting to so strongly. I think and I hope because I think the aesthetic is young, sensitive, um, maybe feminine types. I think that's what they're reacting to very strongly. Um, yeah, 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 because that's really what they don't like, I think. Yeah, yeah. Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, Yeah. Yeah, and there's so much in it. Like, there used to kind of be this distinction um between like feminism, um like LGBT stuff, trans stuff specifically on its own, and then like race stuff. And there used to kind of be these categories of things that the anti-wokes would get mad at. But now it's all kind of been lumped into woke. And I don't know if that's ultimately a good thing, because it kind of renders their critiques absurd, because all of these things are so different. But or maybe it's in their favor. Like, maybe they've just found the best way to market their like reactionary tendencies. Mhm. Yeah, I find anti-woke to be a term that I reach for when I describe certain types of people, and I'm trying to but I think anti-SJW used to serve the same function. So, maybe that's the same thing, but I think more people are anti-woke than were anti-SJW. That was quite a specific niche, I think. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, I like the description of it kind of goes more to the root of how the word arose, of being like awake to like flaws in the system. It's almost kind of like a matrixy Buddhist kind of view, like seeing the flaws in the matrix and being aware of them. So I do like that kind of root. And as far as social issues, I guess it would just be like being aware of how flaws in systems negatively impact people. That would be like a very that would be like a very charitable way to put it. You could also spin it to be like, oh, it's those people with the funny hair who yell at you. Like you could also spin it that way, but that's how I would put it. Yeah. 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 And being aware of other people's experiences too, because oh, I find that that's kind of criticized by anti-wokes, and sometimes people do it do it in a really bad way, you know, like there's the privileged white university students who start speaking for minorities of groups they're not a part of. Like some people do it really badly, but I think something that exists on the left that is really awesome, and I wish it was more less of a partisan trait, but being able to put yourself in other people's shoes, I think is an interesting part of wokeness. Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. Good. Hmm. I think yeah, I think it would be, have you ever been to Texas? Like Austin, Texas? Okay. My best friend lives there, so I've been there a couple times. There's a taco, like, little mini franchise in Austin called Torchy's Tacos, and they have a taco called the Brush Fire, I think, and I literally dream about it. It has, like, it's, jerk chicken, mangoes, a really spicy sauce, I think coleslaw. It's so good. It's so amazing. So I would probably have that. Um, and then they have, like, homemade tortilla chips and queso that are really, really good. So that would round it out. And then for dessert, I would do pistachio crème brûlée. Oh. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I think that's it there. Yeah, the brush fire. Oh, it's so good. Yeah, yeah. You'd never think, like, mangoes on a taco, but it's like the sweetness cuts the spiciness. It's really good. And then the pistachio crème brûlée, when I was in high school, I went to France with, like, because I did French school. I did French immersion all through school, and we took a trip to France, and, on our last night in Paris, we went to this little restaurant, and, their food was amazing, but for dessert, they gave us pistachio crème brûlée, and we loved it so much that they brought out a second round, and, oh, I still think about it. It was, like, 16 years ago, and I still dream about it. Oh, it's good. Yeah. Yeah, it's like a very smooth, kind of pudding, and then the top is burned with a torch. So it Yeah, and so when you eat it, it's very, like, sweet and smooth, but the top is, like, crackly and has that kind of, like, campfire kind of burnt like, it's I don't know, it doesn't sound good, but it all kind of mingles. It's very, very good. Yeah, uh, homemade tortilla chips with queso. Yeah, but the chips are good, and queso, you can't go wrong with with cheese. Yeah, it's so good. I do, yep. Not so well anymore, but yeah, if you can have any meal. Yeah. Oh, Rhiannon is in the chat and says that she can't hear you, that only my voice is coming through. Yeah. Oh. Is it the whole time, Rhiannon? Or was there a point where it cut out? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yep, I can hear you. Yeah. Oh, she says it's the whole time. Yep. Oh, but she only tuned in 5 minutes ago, so it could have been salvageable before that. Oh,
Uh-oh,
oh,
went
you
out.
left and then came back.
Yeah. Now I have bad connection. So I wonder if that's what
Uh-oh.
she was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You are breaking up. Um,
Uh-oh.
which is really me. I'm looking at your bar. You got a lot of bars, and I don't have any bars. I don't know what the heck. Oh, that's too
Uh-oh.
bad. We're rolling.
Oh, she says she can hear you now.
Oh, so it may have just been a network
Yeah.
error. Yeah, I think it was just a network thing. And it
Yeah.
looks like I'm having trouble with my network. So we'll just power through, and then after this is where I should be able to download it and maybe edit it if there's some lag in between.
Mhm.
But I wanted to ask you how you do a certain thing, which I can't do. So you able to skirt two spaces, those anti-woke spaces that we've been talking about, and then also those progressive woke spaces that we've been talking about. Now, how are you able to do that?
Um, the funny answer is that I hope they don't find out about each other either side. Um, Specifically, I hope that a lot of my more progressive kind of allies and friends don't find out about some of my other associations. Um,
that's, that's really
but
bad that it has to be that way.
yeah, I struggle a lot with kind of the ethics of talking across the line in some ways. Most of the time, I'm able to justify it to myself, but sometimes I do really go back and forth on the value of some relationships. Um, but I do try to just be a very friendly and fun kind of person online, and I try not to well, it's funny. I in most interactions, I try not to antagonize, and I try not to go towards those topics that have a lot of friction for me and whoever I'm talking to. But when I do go there, I really go there. So it's kind of like a time and a place thing. I try to be fun and friendly most of the time. Um, because I do think it's valuable to be able to be in different spaces and to be able to talk to different types of people. Um, and then it's funny because the progressives would get angry at me, but a lot of the time when I have a relationship with someone who's more in the center or more on the right even, other people will go to them and warn them about me. And this has been happening more and more often. So,
Wait, I
like,
don't wait.
some
No, go ahead, explain it because
it
you're going to explain what that means.
it's so funny. I've heard like multiple times from different people that I'm friends with who are either in the anti-woke group or even like conservative. People will come to them and warn them that I have like my pronouns in my Twitter bio, or
Oh
warn
no.
them that they saw me post a tweet by so and so, as if my friend needs to be warned that I'm some kind of like double agent. It's so funny. So I know this has happened to like multiple people. It's like the funniest thing ever. Like they don't come to me. They don't come to me and argue with me. They go to my friend and say like, "Oh, by the way." Like it's
Interesting.
so funny. I love it so much, and that's why I have my pronouns in my bio, to make people like that upset.
Okay.
Like, can you imagine going to someone and being like, "Oh, your friend doesn't isn't the way that I like." Like,
Well, okay.
so
You know what?
bizarre.
I can see that, but not you. I mean, I didn't. I thought that you might say that because, and you kind of did say it a little bit that you don't go to those topics as much. You know, you avoid them unless it's something you really care about. And
There's a
so
time
I
and a
saw that.
place.
Yeah. But that, I think that just because you had the pronouns in your bio, that would be the thing that people would say, oh wow, be careful with her. But that's the thing about Twitter. I mean, people will really make a big deal if you have your pronouns in your bio, which is
Oh, they
amazing.
hate it. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
so
I
funny.
don't. It's amazing, amazing. Now, okay, I think that both sides do some crazy stuff. So that, and granted, we're being very coarse here by putting everybody into two. We get that. But all right,
Yeah.
you pointed out some problems with anti-wokes. So I'm gonna point out some problems with wokes.
Okay.
So, and for those of you who don't know, me and Rebecca do our chat group as many people do on Twitter, right? And so, believe it or not, I'm probably a little more to the center than I'm on. And so, I'll say something, and I am met not with, no, I'm met with, oh my God, how could you say you're the worst person in the world? Have you read the data? Oh my God. And it's like, wow, this is what people who are anti-woke say about woke folks. And I said, you probably said, me too, you did me too. Jumping on my back. And I get it, a different view on some things. So it maybe so I'm saying that it happens probably on both sides. So, but that's good on you, Rebecca, that you're able to because I mean I think that you probably are going, your presence will grow, and you're going to be able, and the things that you produce aren't, I mean, anyone can enjoy them, right? So there's no reason for you to alienate anyone or group. So yeah, I mean, I think that, skirting the line is really good.
Yeah. And I think it's hard for me because I started off with any nonfiction writing that I do. Like, I've only really been doing that for a couple of years, and all of the connections that I made early on are more on the anti-woke side. And it's been hard for me to kind of think about if I want to make a shift in my. I want to start writing articles and essays more, but my viewpoint is kind of inconsistent with my connections. So I've kind of been thinking, like, what do I want to do? Do I want to, because, there's a lot of little centrist and right wing websites that will publish people, but there's not really that same thing on the left. The left publications are big mainstream publications that are harder to get published by. So I've just been kind of evaluating that. And I think what I might do is use my connections, is try to meld my connections with my newer viewpoint. So I kind of want to write from a more lefty perspective for people who are more on the right, or at people who are more on the right. So I think like my dream gig would be to be like kind of the leftist provocateur on a conservative site or on a centrist site. I think that would be really
That
fun.
mentality. Can you do that? That's gonna take skin ponies, but I guess you could do it. So
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting. And I think that's where a lot of my strengths lie, in like telling stories and being convincing and showing another side. So I think I would get more use out of that skill in that kind of function.
okay, all right, yeah. I did a question in my slides here, but I really wanted to ask you that. All right, now how did we get into this cultural mess that we're in? Like, what happened? We're crazy now.
I don't know. Everything, it feels to me like everything's on fast forward. Like everything's accelerating, and like there's stuff going on all the time, and there's different, like, there's all these scandals and problems and news stories that come up like literally all the time, and it never stops. So I do think that partially it's a function of our new media space and how technology has contributed to that. I think that's a really big part of it, because if we didn't have Twitter, or if we didn't have the internet, we wouldn't be seeing things. And now we see things. So I think that really messes with our perspective.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a part of it. It's just so much information out there, right? It's
Yeah.
just information overload in some ways.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And there's
I
no way
certainly
that one person can, there's no way that you can do your own research for every little thing. So many people feel like pressured to have an opinion on things that they don't really know anything about. And that's such a big problem. People talking about things that they have no idea what they're talking about. You see that where like someone will post an article where the headline is a little bit inflammatory, and you scroll down and all the replies and comments are people who are very angry, and they seem to be very angry about something specific. And then you actually read the article and it's nothing like what they're talking about. This happens to me like on the daily.
yeah, it happens a lot. People look at the headline and also who's posting it, and then they just
Yep.
and then just talk about it. Yeah. But I think that it's never been the case that we've had to rely on ourselves to kind of decipher information. It used to be the case that we would rely on others to do it. But the
Yeah.
people that we used to rely on, I mean, if this was 1960 and the CDC or the equivalent agency in Canada said, all right, this is what we got to do with these masks, people just do them. And then, of course, there would be these organizations have never always been, it just haven't been. So somewhere, nothing would have been a little bit amiss. People would have generally said, all right, this is the best we got. Let's just kind of follow through with it and move on. And it would have actually been okay. Much more what goes around, constantly finding problems with the CDC and then presenting misinformation, which has a little bit of truth, but we better off to just follow what this institution said and just gotten through it. So I guess a lack of trust in institutions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's a big problem. And I think I saw, I think Iona Italia actually tweeted about this today. The the faults in the new media. So like when Joe Rogan says something that's not true and spreads misinformation are always thrown back in the face of establishment media. So like when establishment media does something bad, it's their fault. But when Joe Rogan does something bad, it's also establishment media's fault. Have you noticed this? Like,
I haven't, but that is
because
true. Yeah.
so yeah, Joe Rogan says something wrong, and people will say, well, CNN needs to take a look in the mirror and think about what they did to drive people to Joe Rogan who says wrong things. And it's like, well, why can't it be Joe's fault that he's wrong? Why can't he be held accountable for what he says? Why does it have to be some reflection on some other
Yeah.
organization? Like, that's really frustrating to me.
Yes, I didn't think about that, but you're right. You're right. Well, I guess a certain group of people are always putting the blame on mainstream media. I mean, some people aren't. I didn't think about it that way, but now that you mentioned it, I can think to some comments on Twitter, and I've seen that certainly. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just too bad. It's really too bad that we have these problems. It's just too much information out there. It really is, and we're trying to contribute to it, Rebecca. You're putting your stuff out there, and I put my stuff out
Yeah,
there, so
we're part of the problem.
I think so. All right, let's kind of wrap this up here. I like to keep it to about an hour. We're at about 50 minutes, so it's pretty good. Okay, what will your life be like?
Okay, so 20 years from now, I will be 50 exactly. Um, I think I will still be living in BC, British Columbia. Um, I I love it here. I think I've lived here my whole life. I wasn't born here, but I moved here shortly after, and I've lived in and around Vancouver my entire life. And I really love it here. It's home to me, so I don't want to leave it. However, Vancouver might have something to say about that. The housing crisis here is like worse than anywhere else in North America. So things are extremely expensive, but the problem with that is that cities are also where the economic opportunity is. So I'll probably be here forever. Um, but I would eventually like to own a house and or some kind of permanent place to live. Um, I don't know. I'll still be writing for sure. Um, and beyond that, it's so hard to say because my life has changed so much just in the past like 6 years. So it's hard to say, like, everything could change. I don't know. But I'll definitely still be writing. That's something that I couldn't stop if I wanted to. So that's all that I know for sure. Thank you. Whatever happens will be. I'll deal with it. Yeah. Yes. And in the group chat. See ya.